That day began under a sky so vast it felt endless, yet even the wide-open desert held a whisper of unease. Kenny Veach, a man forged in solitude and sun-scorched trails, stepped into the Sheep Mountains with the kind of quiet confidence only years of isolation could grant. He wore a simple shirt and jeans, gear scraped bare by wind, and in his steady breath lay both peace and something a little unmoored, like a compass needle quivering before a storm. He had left behind the clutter of a coffee shop job in Las Vegas, shucked away the grind, to chase something more raw and real. He called himself Snake Bit Me, online a moniker earned from encounters with rattlesnakes and cliffs, from nights spent under constellations untainted by city lights. All that's interesting, NevadaMagazine.com. He was proud of his freedom, fearless in ways that unsettled his own girlfriend Sharian. Yet despite that courage, he carried shadows, years of depression, whispering doubts he never fully surrendered to anyone. Mr. Law's morbid curiosity this morning held a veneer of routine. He told Sharian he'd be back in a couple of days. A solo hike, something he'd done countless times through the Mojave and Great Basin deserts, untethered and untracked. All that's interesting, int-missing.fandom.com. But that hush before departure cradled a subtle tremor. Kenny was returning to something he'd seen before, a cave like no other. A cave shaped like a giant M, etched into the desert rock. A cave that had let him in and told him not to stay. That initial glimpse of the M cave in mid-2014 became a myth in online hiking circles. His body vibrated at its threshold, a tremor that rose with proximity, until fear shoved him backward. Wikipedia, historicflix.com. In that gut-strike moment, the rationale and the inexplicable collided. Logic screamed about hypoxia, wild vibrations, maybe even overexertion under sun, while something lodged just beneath thought insisted this was different. Yet the internet demanded proof. Viewers pushed him to return, to capture the mystery in motion. So Kenny returned in October 2014, this time armed with a 9mm handgun and a camera. Private, determined, a wanderer with evidence as his only map. Wikipedia Travel, Nevada. But the cave remained hidden, muffled beneath desert echoes as he traversed. Ridgelines where a black ram watched from above, unblinking. Wikipedia, strangeoutdoors.com. The failed attempt stung. Critics called him liar. Skeptics said it was made up, and one ominous comment appeared online. No, do not go back there. If you find that cave entrance, don't go in, you won't get out. Wikipedia Travel, Nevada Premonition, or an echo of something indifferent and blind to warning. November 10, 2014 slipped into history with the same tranquil hush as any other day, but this time, the desert swallowed his steps. Kenny set out alone, heading into the labyrinth of canyons and abandoned mineshafts littering the sheep range. Wikipedia, strangeoutdoors.com. He carried essentials, his truck, a cell phone, supplies, but no camera this time, not for documentation, but perhaps for escape. Wikipedia, morbid curiosity. When he didn't return, alarm crept in. Sharian reported him missing. The search was swift, desperate. Ground teams combed the unforgiving high desert. Helicopters circled canyons and ridges. Wikipedia, int-missing.fandom.com. Days passed with almost no sign, only his cell phone, resting near an abandoned mineshaft, stubbornly in place, as though left intentionally. Wikipedia, morbid curiosity. That phone was proof and a cruel tease. It confirmed he reached the edge of whatever he sought, but then, nothing. The desert held its secret, empty voices answering. No camera, no tracks, no body, only questions reverberated among boulders and cacti. Here, dread settles heavy, not the sudden yank of panic, but the wide, stretching silence after the scream. Did he fall? Did the desert claim him in a wash or a shaft? Did he vanish into the earth, like the cave itself? Or was this disappearance deliberate? She believed he may have left things behind intentionally, knowing the loneliness of the wasteland might form a final envelope. Wikipedia morbid curiosity, yet others speak of strange power, military cover-up, subterranean energy, secret experiments. Near Nellis Air Force Base, Area 51 whispers echoing against rock walls. Strangeoutdoors.com, all that's interesting. Some say it was supernatural, others say mental collapse, accidental death, suicide, conspiracy, or cosmic joke. Theories multiply like crows. Even more. An alternate reality game emerged in 2021. Friends turned the search into a mysterious interactive quest online, blurring boundaries between hope and hype. Wikipedia. Through every thread, through every rumor, one fact persists. Kenny Veach is gone. The M Cave, if it exists, remains unverified, a ghost of sandstone. Locals call the terrain remote, dangerous, mine shafts used for chemical disposal, desert known for violent heat, and empty echoes. Wikipedia morbid curiosity, a place where the earth might simply open, or refuse to let go. The searcher spoke of the wind first. Out there, in the Sheep Mountains, wind doesn't simply pass, it drags across the ridges with a low, bone-deep moan, as though the land remembers every footstep it has swallowed. Volunteers pushed through, thorn and shale, eyes scanning for a flash of denim, the silver of a belt buckle, anything that might break the uniform browns and grays. The ground itself seemed to conspire against them, erasing tracks with each gust, filling holes and covering clues before human eyes could find them. The desert is patient, it can wait decades before giving anything back. They found the phone early on. It lay at the lip of an abandoned mine shaft, deep black, and breathing cold air from a darkness that had never known sunlight. The shaft's edge was crumbly, its stones shifting under the weight of boots, making even the most seasoned searcher hesitate to peer over. A beam of light cut into the void, but the blackness swallowed it whole after a few yards. No glint of metal, no crumpled body, no movement, only that strange, muffled wind spiraling upward from below. The phone had a thin layer of dust, as though it had been there for more than a single day, but less than a week. Inside, the battery was dead. No messages, no photos, no calls. They marked the shaft and moved on, covering miles of ridges and washes. The Nevada Search and Rescue Team knows these terrains eat people alive. Step wrong, and the earth opens under you, or a canyon funnels you into a place you can't climb out of. But the odd thing was the absence of signs. No scattered gear, no food wrappers, no clothing torn by thorns. It was as if Kenny had stepped off the trail and dissolved into the air. Back in Las Vegas, Sharian replayed their last conversation over and over, each time catching a different nuance. He had been excited, yes, but there was a tension in his voice. A pause before he said, "I'll be back." Kenny was no stranger to risk. He thrived on it. But that pause, it was the same hesitation she'd heard once before. The night he came home from the first encounter with the M Cave. That night, he'd stood by the kitchen sink, staring at his hands, as if trying to remember how they'd come to be his own. It felt wrong, he'd murmured, like the whole place was humming at a frequency my body wasn't meant to hear. She'd laughed nervously, but he hadn't smiled back. On forums, strangers dissected every detail of his YouTube comments. One user insisted the vibration was a natural phenomenon, ultrasonic frequencies from wind passing through narrow openings, capable of triggering nausea, fear, even hallucinations. Another countered with military theories. The cave could be an entrance to a classified site near Nellis Air Force Base, where subterranean sensors or equipment could produce such sensations. And then there were those who whispered about the desert's other legends, shadow figures, unmarked helicopters, lights under the ground. Days turned into weeks. The official search scaled back, but the unofficial one, fueled by obsession, only deepened. Independent hikers returned again and again, filming their treks, combing every cliff and canyon in a widening radius. None found the M Cave. Some claimed to stumble on caves that might fit the description, but each either didn't match Kenny's story, or led nowhere. Others spoke of an uncanny sense of being watched, of hearing faint mechanical sounds with no visible source. As December bled into January, the desert's night air sharpened, freezing water bottles solid by dawn. Kenny's absence became heavier than any proof could be. Sherian stopped expecting the phone to ring, but she still caught herself glancing at it when the house was too quiet. The space he left behind was strangely less like an absence, and more like a sealed room you could never enter again. There was one night, years later, when a hiker camping near the sheep range swore he heard footsteps outside his tent, not the random scatter of animals, but the steady, cautious tread of a man avoiding dry branches. When he called out, the steps stopped. He waited, listening, until the wind rose again and buried the sound beneath its endless breath. In the morning there were no prints, and so the cave became less a location than a shadow, something that exists not on maps, but in the spaces between stories. The theories have calcified. Suicide in a place he loved, accident in a shaft too deep to search, a deliberate vanishing to escape a life too heavy, or an encounter with something inhuman. Each carries its own kind of dread, and none can be proven. What remains, perhaps, is what the desert wanted from him in the first place. Some say the land keeps the ones who understand it too well, folding them into its stone and dust, letting their names become wind. Others say the cave is still there, waiting for the next person to feel that strange vibration and decide whether to turn back or step inside. Months after the search had ended, the desert remained exactly as it had been, the same cruel beauty, the same jagged ridges lit gold at sunset. But for those who had walked its washes with hope in their chests, the place had changed. They now looked at each hollow shadow with suspicion, each yawning dark space with a question they knew would never be answered. One winter afternoon, a lone hiker followed an old service road near the perimeter of restricted military land. The light was brittle, shadows sharp. He noticed a faint indentation in the cliff facer curve, a shadow that, for a second, looked like the top of an M. His breath caught, not from exertion, but from something colder. As he stepped closer, a low thrum passed through the soles of his boots, into his bones. It wasn't loud, but it was deep, like standing near a colossal engine idling somewhere, far underground. The air tasted metallic. He took one more step, and the sensation intensified until the edges of his vision shimmered. Then silence. The shape was gone. Just rock and shadow and the hiss of the wind curling through the canyon. That hiker turned back. He told no one for months. When he finally spoke, his story was just one more ghost added to the growing collection. For Sherian, life resumed in a way that felt counterfeit. She kept the small trinkets Kenny had collected from his hikes, a strip of snakeskin, a rusted canteen, a pebble smooth as glass. Sometimes she dreamed he came back, walking through the front door with sunburned cheeks and dust in his hair, explaining it all as if it were nothing. But even in those dreams, there was always something in his eyes and absence, a pull toward somewhere else, as if part of him was still out there under that vast Nevada sky. The case file sits cold. No new evidence, no body, just coordinates on a map and a phone recovered beside an abandoned mine shaft. On paper, it reads like so many desert disappearances: remote location, dangerous terrain, missing hiker presumed dead. But in the minds of those who have felt that strange vibration or chased that elusive cave, it is something else entirely. Some have gone looking not for Kenny, but for the feeling he described. They crave that thin line between reality and something other, the edge where your body warns you to stop but your mind whispers forward. A few return, shaken but unharmed. Others turn back early, citing sudden headaches, vertigo, or the unmistakable sense that they were not alone. And still, there are those who simply don't return. The desert keeps its secrets. Perhaps the cave was nothing more than a trick of light, an echo of stone. Perhaps Kenny, burdened by his own private darkness, stepped into one of the countless pits that riddle the sheep range. Or perhaps, and this is the possibility that lingers in the air long after the last word is spoken, perhaps there really is a place out there that hums at a frequency we are not meant to survive. A place that chooses who may enter and who will never be seen again. Even now, hikers glance over their shoulders in those canyons. Even now, when the wind dies for a moment and the silence grows heavy, someone will swear they hear footsteps, steady, deliberate, just out of sight. No one can say for certain. No one can prove it. And maybe that's the point. Out there, under the sun-bleached sky of Nevada, some truths are not meant to be found. Kenny Veach walked toward one of them, and the desert closed behind him.